for us, we really want to make sure that we're good cultural ambassadors to a whole audience in beer, because for a lot of even American centric and all the big people in beer across the world, sometimes this is the first time they've ever been exposed to anything that's Indian or South Asian when it comes to beer. So for us, we want to make sure that we're doing a really good job of showing and showing up for India in a very diplomatic way.
So a few years ago, you had an idea for Rupee Beer. Do you want to just take us on that journey? What were you thinking?
We're still a very young company when it comes to alcohol and beer. We're about 6 years old, and that's still considered very young. I feel like a dinosaur, but definitely it's a business that takes a lot of time, especially since in the United States, it's a regulated industry. It's a 3-tier approach to selling your product. So we can't directly just sell to our consumers. We sell to distributors state by state. So it's very interesting. That's a whole nother situation on alcohol rules that someone in Washington, D.C. could tell you more about. But I am from the restaurant business. So I grew up in Indian restaurants my entire life. My parents, more specifically Punjabi, North Indian. First Indian restaurant my parents had was in Germany, where they used to live in the 1970s. And then immigrating to the United Kingdom, where I was born and my siblings were born. And then eventually coming to the United States and opening 3 restaurants, the first Indian restaurants in the state of Maine. At the time we immigrated there, Maine was the most homogenous state in the United States. I was in the largest city in the state, Portland, Maine, and I was still the only Indian kid in school, aside from my brothers. So yeah, for me, kind of growing up in the Indian restaurant business my entire life, I always noticed a very interesting problem. There was a lack of consistent supply of Indian beer to the US market. Often in the 90s and the 80s, a lot of Indian brands, a lot of legacy brands that we know that we're familiar with, Kingfisher, Taj Mahal in North America, often just didn't have regular supply. And that was all accelerated when I moved back to the United States after living in London for over a decade. And I noticed a very similar problem. Just Indian suppliers weren't sending containers to the United States during COVID-19. And that got me thinking, since a lot of customers specifically always wanted to support local family-run Indian restaurants, and to that matter, just any ethnic restaurant in general. And we just didn't have supply of, ethnic beer in the market. So yeah, me and my brother, who's my co-founder, we teamed up with some really influential people in the world of beer. We're not brewers. We don't know how to brew beer. We didn't go to school for that. But we love to consume beer. We love to have it over moments, and we love Indian food. So from there, we just reverse engineer a recipe that was actually made to pair with the food that we grew up with, lower levels of carbonation, a much smoother profile and taste, and also weaving in ingredients like basmati rice, which a lot of American consumers would be more familiar if they've ever been to a Japanese restaurant. Often a lot of your favorite Japanese beers are really smooth and silky because they're brewed with rice from Asia. So following a similar recipe that my grandfather would have used in India growing up on a farm. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell the story of how Rupee Beer wanted to solve a problem and where we are now and kind of, growing from there.
How would you define an Indian beer?
Yeah, I think it's a very subjective answer. Traditionally, when you look at legacy brands, we might be very familiar with Kingfisher. I grew up selling Kingfisher. I literally have pictures of me when I was like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old behind the bar of an Indian restaurant holding a Kingfisher or behind Kingfisher signs. So I always knew how to talk about beer and what I learned from reading books and also what beer distributors would send in terms of the description. So I've always had an affinity and interest in that whole world. When it comes to Indian beer and what that profile looks like for us, we were really specific in our spec was that for us, we wanted to actually create a recipe that was made to pair with Indian food. So a little bit different, Indian inspired, definitely incorporating ingredients that are from a traditional Indian recipe, maize, corn, very, I would say from the subcontinent, those types of ingredients, but also in craft beer in general, you do see a lot of those ingredients get weaved into the recipes. So for us, it's a combination of creating the brand identity with the story, but also using ingredients at the same time to bring both of those worlds together.
Yeah. Tell me just a little bit about the logistics of the business. So you said you're not brewers. So how does it work? Where is this made? Where is it distributed from? Where are you? Where's your brother? Just tell us about the logistics of the business.
Yeah. So anyone in the CPG world and alcohol beverage, they'll be familiar with something that's often called a co-packer. So for a lot of food businesses that are getting started, that's traditionally the model that you follow. You would go to a larger facility that's producing multiple different types of brands. So even some of the best, largest brands that we see at the grocery store are all coming from co-factories or co-packers. So similar in brewing, we contract brew. For the first 5 years of our journey, we were in downtown Boston. My brother and I both went to university in Boston, so we had a connection there. Also, the Northeast has a very large just beer culture, right? There's been a very large craft renaissance the last decade or so in this part of the world. And now we are in the Midwest. We're grateful we're growing. So we've grown tremendously the last couple of years. So for us, we had to really pick a strategic location that really helped us meet our customer. We recently launched California. Shipping is also very expensive in the United States these days, on top of also launching new markets like Canada and the European Union coming up. So for us, strategic ports are really important as well. So right now we're rejigging our involvement or where we have contract facilities and breweries. And yeah, I was in New York City for a long time, which is why I kind of believe we got socially connected that way. After I moved from London, I was in the city for 3 years until I went full time on Rupee Beer about, I would say, 30 months ago or so. And since then, my job takes me across the United States, promoting Indian beer, Indian values, Rupee Beer, in all different verticals.
Yeah. I will say anecdotally, I remember in like your first year, I was looking for your beer and it was sold out in a number of places. And I thought that's a good sign, right? Like it felt like pretty quickly you developed some buzz. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing if you're sold out. And then also, I just wanted to kind of sense of how the business is going.
Yeah, totally. I would say the journey's been very interesting. I said earlier, I feel like a dinosaur sometimes because even almost 6 years in, it's definitely, we've been working very hard and very diligently. And as I mentioned before, what a lot of people don't know, and if you ever have interest in wanting to go into the alcohol space, at least in the American market, it's very interesting. It's regulated. So you have to go through a distributor. So that's also a whole nother nuance that a lot of people often don't understand, which I'll always tell them is that be prepared to deal with a very old school system that is set up from many decades prior, where it's the different people along the way will before the beer gets into consumers' hands, it's gone through a journey of different places across the whole entire, I would say, lifeline of transportation and logistics. But for us, yeah, so I would say we're grateful. We've had some really great initial buzz, and from there now, for us, it's about expanding to more territories. So we just launched California. So that's been a big market for us. We go where our customer base is, where we get interest. Obviously, when you're South Asian or Desi, you also have to also follow where our community is, since that's where a large portion of the requests come in from of saying, listen, I have an Indian restaurant that wants Rupee Beer. I heard about you guys while I was in New Jersey. I'm in Texas. I'm in Illinois. So for us, we are focused really right now as we grow to launch more states, launch more markets, and eventually have distribution in all 50 US states. But three-tier, that system really does make it a little bit slower for anyone in alcohol.
The California rollout, I believe. Are you in Costco in California? Is that, yeah, that's a pretty
Yeah,
big deal, isn't it?
yeah, we're so grateful. It's like I had to pinch myself when I got an email, and I was like, "This can't be. Is this real?" So we've been in Costco before in another really great part of the country in the DMV, which also has a lot of South Asians.
Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, just in case someone didn't know that. Yeah.
I didn't know that before I started going there for work, so I also myself, and now I use it interchangeably. But definitely, also, yeah, for anyone that's always interested in immigration and understanding where diaspora communities hang out, I know all the hotbeds now in the United States for where South Asians live, and even breaking it down more further in terms of if they're from a certain part of India or a certain part of South Asia, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, right? So you learn all those nuances on the job and I didn't know, and I have not ever traveled as much in the US as I have now. I'm grateful. I've gotten to see a lot of cool places around the world, but with Rupee Beer, I have been going from the most interesting towns, states, state by state. And yeah, California, the Bay Area, after the tri state New York City area, second largest South Asian community in the United States. So it made sense. And there's a huge community there. But also, I would say Rupee does really well in places where, aside from just the Indian community and South Asian community, our drinker is very global. So we are in so many verticals now where we're selling in Asian restaurants, like Thai restaurants, even Chinese restaurants, Middle Eastern, Persian, Caribbean, Trinidad, Trinidadian restaurants. So it's really interesting. anywhere there's people that enjoy international flavor, global flavor, those types of cuisines, we're seeing rupee placements in. And also just in general, the American drinker that wants something a little bit different. Also, that's kind of where our base is. And larger cities, like New York City, as an example, tend to have those types of people that seek out products like that really resonate with them.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Carolina, who's producing this particular episode and is our director of partnerships, encountered your beer at an Epicenter event. And now, whenever she comes to the house, she'll specifically request your mango beer. And so I think that's a good example of your global reach because she's Ecuadorian American. So tell us a little bit about the flavors. What do you have and what's planned?
Our flagship product that we launched was our basmati rice lager. If anyone's ever seen our brand, that's our blue label. Just a light, very easy to drink, less carbonated, hella style lager that is very just neutral, pairs extremely well with food. We get a lot of feedback from people that often say, I don't like beer. It's not my poison of choice, but they're like, it's very palatable. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. We get like Indian moms, Indian grandmothers that just because of the name, they want to try it. So that's often great when I'm like, wow, like that means a lot when I see that. We launched our second product or SKU on I think like maybe 3 years ago on Diwali, which was that we knew we wanted to do an IPA for the listeners. IPA, India Pale Ale. In the beer world, in the craft scene, IPAs have been the number one selling SKU for quite some time. But we knew we wanted to create a recipe that really honed and brought it back to the original story of why it's called India Pale Ale, the British India connection. And our brewers are top winning British brewers. So they've launched over 100 breweries around the world. So they really understood what we wanted to do with that recipe. A less bitter, less hoppy ale that would have been shipped from ports in London to ports in Bombay or in Calcutta in the 19th century. So a really interesting storyline with the whole history of why it's called India Pale Ale. And on World Mango Day, I believe last year or 2 years ago, we launched our Mango Wheat Ale, which pays homage to the Indian mango, national fruit of India. We love mangoes. And we knew we wanted to play with flavor. And if there was a flavor that we played with, it had to be a mango. So in India, often it's considered a sacred fruit, right? So it's definitely has many variations. So all of our products always often also bring it back to the founder of the modern day rupee and the currency. They all tell a story. So if you ever pick up one of our cans or packaging, you can read that. And our next product that's just launching in about 2 weeks, right in time for Diwali, is our new non-alcoholic product, our NA beer. If anyone's familiar with beer right now, a lot of non-alcoholics coming onto the market. So we're really excited to bring first in North America an NA beer. So if you don't drink or if you like lower ABV beers, it's a very light, easy to drink non-alcoholic brew coming to market this Diwali season.
That's great. I was just about to ask you about the non-alcoholic trend because it feels like increasingly every gathering I'm in has non-alcoholic wines, non-alcoholic beers, mocktails. Like it's definitely a thing right now. So it sounds like you're meeting that market too.
Totally. We got requests even from, I would say, beyond Indian consumers asking for a non-alcoholic product. And they would say often like, hey, I love your product. I love the story. I love the brand and name, but I just don't drink. So that was really interesting. And yeah, also just kind of looking at for us, we're about building out our range. So we want to show more diversity in the types of products and drinks we have. So as we're still very young, as mentioned, so we're trying to add, a new interesting SKU that also makes sense to us. I never want to bring something to market that I don't like or I would want to actually buy on the shelf at a grocery store or if I'm at a restaurant. So slowly as we grow and we offer more products, everything is curated. Everything really has to make sense with, if someone looks at it, they're going to say, yes, this makes complete sense for the Rupee brand.
Can you quantify the business a little bit for me? Like whatever you're comfortable with, how much you've grown, kind of a sense of sales, even like staff. Like where are you at now compared to when you launched?
Yeah, so as mentioned, with the whole regulated industry situation with three tier, when we started, we were literally self-distributing in a small little market like Maine. We are grateful now we're in about 20 states with some of the largest distributors in the United States. So as we've grown, as we've scaled, we've definitely increased our volume, our around 40,000 case equivalents per annum, which is still considered small when you're comparing us to some of the larger giants like AB and Bev, Molson Coors, et cetera. But I would say from a craft beer, Indian inspired product. A lot of people in the industry would say you guys are definitely on a very good trajectory for where you need to be. So for us, it's just about scaling, bringing the product to more places. Our team has also come and gone, grown over the years. Two founders, so mission centric, founder centric company, and we have some really great people on our team that help us across the country with national chain accounts, events. We do a lot of events, so you might have seen in different markets. We've experimented with different sales reps, also marketing, sales, finance. So we have everyone in different capacities that helps us in terms of where we are and as we grow and scale. And yeah, we are looking for someone to join us on the West Coast at some point, since that is a whole different country. And for me, even my first couple businesses were in the United Kingdom. So for me, I'm also learning a lot about how just America is a huge country. So literally New York to London, 6 hours, New York to LA, 6 hours, right? So it's like very interesting that I'm like, you have to understand the nuances of such a large market. And
Right.
it's essentially like the European Union. Every state is very different. So we are understanding all those moments. Texas also, as an example, a very important state in the US, and they drink a lot of beer. So for us, also knowing where we should put people or where I have to be as a founder, um, my calendar really has to get filled out as we scale.
Yeah. Last year I interviewed the founders of Patel Brothers, and that was fascinating because they definitely, similar to you, are keeping an eye on demographic trends of where the South Asian community is. But they also say there's a trend of when they see a few families and they build a Patel Brothers there, there's also a movement of South Asians there because needing a big Indian grocery is a part of, your comfort in a community. And so it's just interesting how, a brand kind of can create even more affinity among consumers. So, one example would be New Jersey. The Indian community was largely Jersey City, then Central Jersey. Now there's massive influx to South Jersey. And the Patel brothers kind of explosion through the state shows the same thing. So I think it's really interesting. Are there any areas that you're seeing growth of the communities you're describing along those lines?
Totally. And to your point on Patel Brothers, very interesting. I love insights and stats like that. I got my master's in international relations. So these types of like trends, right? Like immigration patterns where people end up. I'm a nerd when it comes to those types of things. And I love seeing, especially when it's your own people, how even in London, in central London, where I was born, how different ethnic groups from the 60s to 70s were Indian, Punjabi, but from East Africa. So even that whole movement of people. So I definitely will have to look into the Patel brothers insights and trends. I love stuff like that. Yeah, for us, it's very interesting. Obviously, the New York City tri-state area is a sizable community. I would say Texas is very interesting right now. DFW, hotbed for South Asians right now. Florida has some really interesting things. North Carolina, huge growing community there and has been for a while. The Apex Raleigh area, very interesting. The DMV. But even now, like I would say as an example, if you look at Maine, I think I'd mentioned earlier when my parents immigrated to Maine, it was the most homogenous state, most Caucasian state in the United States. I think it's number three now in the United States. So in terms of diversity, it's grown a little bit, but definitely when I'm out and about, I see more South Asian faces than I would have never seen in the 90s growing up. So I think slowly we're going to see that wave. And yeah, if you look at it and you compare it to places like in the UK, where the Indian community, South Asian community has been there for just much longer because of the colonial context. I think there's a lot of nuances you can pick from that also and kind of see what's happened there.
So do your parents still have the Indian restaurant?
But yeah, so they still have still part of their portfolio of things that they do. My dad, we're hoping my parents retire this year, since they've been working for quite some time. But yeah, over half a century in Indian restaurants. This year, I think around 55 years as restaurateurs. So definitely shows me in my entrepreneurial journey a lot of strength when I'm over here saying 6 years in, and especially in a restaurant business, as anyone knows in New York City as an example, it's a cutthroat, very hard hour, long hour kind of business. So definitely, I've learned a lot of key insights from coming from the restaurateur background and the type of resilience you need to have. But yes, still going, and a large fan base also, which we're really grateful for.
What are some of the names of the restaurants they've launched, just in case people who've either, been in London, Germany, or Maine would recognize them?
Yeah, so Bombay Mahal, that's been going for almost 40 years. There's Tandoor, there's Taste of India, Mr. India. So yeah, it's been a wide variety of different things, and even more than that. So my dad got his just started in culinary studies in India in like the 70s, and then he was trying to apply to get out of India, and he wanted to leave and go really far away. And the only two countries that accepted him were actually, which is really interesting, Ecuador in South America and the Netherlands. And he said, I don't know any Indian people in Latin America. I don't think he even knew what Spanish sounded like. But he said, I know a few guys from a few villages over that are hanging out in Amsterdam. I'm going to go there. And that's what kind of launched his career in the culinary world. And he ended up working in his first Indian restaurant in Amsterdam, and then eventually moved to Cologne, Germany, where my parents got married and lived, and where my older brother grew up as well, before coming to England, where all my cousins and family lived. So yeah, it was really interesting.
So I do want to ask you about kind of community and giving back. So I mentioned, I've never asked you for something and you've said no. I imagine you get a lot of requests from our community to support their events or activations with, free beer, discounted beer. How are you able to say yes to so many people? What are you, what's your kind of calculation here? And just talk to me a little bit about that aspect of building your business and building your community.
Totally. Yeah, community is really important. And I think, especially when you're doing something where you're a little bit not first to market, but definitely there hasn't been much innovation in what the legacy players in Indian space have been doing. So for us, when we were coming into this, we also knew that we want to cultivate something that really is authentic to our values also. So for us, yeah, we get a lot of requests, especially now the season of Diwali is coming up. My inbox gets quite filled with people from all over the country, even internationally, often asking, is your product here, or is there a way we can do something together? I go off the basis of, people I like to work with. Definitely will, do my best to always make sure I come out and deliver a product where I can. So for us, it's a combination of understanding the relationships that we have, since we do get lots of requests. But also, I would say, in terms of just giving back as well, like in the beginning, also, we wanted to do some really interesting CSR which we're still developing now. I'm really passionate about, little things like water, right? Like I'm over here drinking beer and someone is not able to drink water somewhere in the world. So at some point, with the regulation with beer, it's a little bit trickier because I mentioned the nuances of three tier. But eventually, we would love to do something in India where we're able to build wells or make, match a donation where someone, as I mentioned, I feel really guilty sometimes when I'm crushing a beer and people are not able to have things like water, which is a big part of beer as well. So I think for us, those types of small things where as we scale, as we grow, and for the culture, we always show up. Anything we can do to help promote Indian values, South Asian values, and really goes into the story of Rupee as well. For us, we really want to make sure that we're good cultural ambassadors to a whole audience in beer, because for a lot of even American centric and all the big people in beer across the world, sometimes this is the first time they've ever been exposed to anything that's Indian or South Asian when it comes to beer. So for us, we want to make sure that we're doing a really good job of showing and showing up for India in a very diplomatic way, if that makes any sense, in a very like a cultural manner as well. So we want to make sure the product can get in as many eyes as possible. And we've had really great feedback from people directly emailing me, our general emails that we have, or tagging us online when we see people drinking beer in the most interesting places. That's very cool.
That's awesome. We're going to wrap up soon. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions, but I also just wanted to make sure we have some space for what do you need now? What's keeping you up? What can people who are listening help with? Is there, anything along those lines?
Yeah, totally. I would say for a lot of the audience that's in New York City is a really important city for us. We obviously want to do a lot more there. So for us, I'm always just asking. I love seeing people in the market when I'm working events. If you're at your local Indian restaurant ever, ask for Rupee beer. And if they don't have it, I tell them how they can get it. My friends will always do that if they're in random places. I was just in Indiana, as an example, near the border of Illinois, down to some really. I was in San Antonio a week before that, going closer to the Mexican border. And I always tell my friends, if you're at an Indian restaurant anywhere in America and you don't see Rupee beer, ask the restaurateur or manager to get Rupee onto their menu. So that would be my small little ask that I ask anyone across the United States. But we're always somewhere, and especially now with the volley season coming up, if you're in New York City or somewhere around, I'm sure you'll see Rupee at some sort of event coming up.
Van, is there anything From lessons learned, I feel like I always learn a lot from entrepreneurs when they tell me like they went through a hard moment and came out on the other side and learned X. Is there anything that comes to mind there?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for entrepreneurship, I've listened to so many podcasts before. I'm always reading for wisdom. I love wisdom. I seek it out because I think you need that to really get the strength to keep going when times are looking, low. And I've done entrepreneurship now, startups now for, for quite some time in different companies as well. You have to always know that the light is at the end of the tunnel. And when you reflect back 3 years ago from something happened that was really a deep moment, time heals everything. So I would say for me, even I'm having to remind myself of a lot of those things when there are weeks or days that are ridiculously busy or a lot of things are thrown at you and you have a lot of fires to fight as a founder. That will always die down. It's just the law of how things operate. And it's really important to just understand with time, everything will pass and to just try to keep your mood, keep your energy, keep your spirit really streamlined. If that makes sense, because I know when you're a founder and an entrepreneur, there's so many things that are thrown at you and psychologically it can be all over the place, right, in terms of the roadmap of what an entrepreneur's journey looks like. So it's really important to really be as zen as possible, and figure out how to navigate your day, otherwise it will consume you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Fast questions, fast answers. Here we go. Ready?
Let's go.
Okay. Favorite food to pair with Rupee beer?
Wow, we were just talking about momos and I'm on a little bit of a momo binge right now, so let's go with momos.
Okay. Dream city to see Rupee beer on tap.
We are getting ready to do some really interesting things in a part of the world, which I find very fascinating. I can't. We're going to be hopefully, knock on wood, the in Dubai very soon. So I'm very excited to see that, and also the way that country liberalizes its approach in the GCC, in the Gulf. I'm really interested about that part of the world.
One word that describes Rupee beer.
Global.
What's the most surprising place someone has ordered Rupee beer from?
Wow, good question. We've been in a lot of different sporting events. So I would say we were at Fenway Park every year in Boston. So that's pretty cool when people are Instagramming pictures of drinking Rupee beer in Major League Baseball.
If you weren't brewing beer, what would you be doing?
It's on my LinkedIn. I'd be an ambassador. Got my master's in international relations. I was on track to be a diplomat, and I ended up doing something very different.
One word that sums up entrepreneurship for you.
For me, wow, fulfillment.
That's beautiful. Are you? This is an aside. Are you guys doing anything for the World Cup soccer?
Yeah, so we were just in Houston. Houston's going to be one of the cities that host some tournaments. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are brewing right now, and because there's so many different cities participating in the World Cup this year in North America, keep an eye out.
Van, I cannot thank you enough. I really mean it. You have been there for us. Yeah, if I can ever do anything, I think I'm here. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you.